Might as well.
All right, here we are.
So we've made a number of recent developments that we probably want to consolidate or like keep track of, continue developing.
Mm-hmm.
For one, the map of Portal Mountain, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you like it.
That is good.
What's your opinion on moving the elements down?
Moving them down,
Yeah.
like not connected to the
Main floor.
lobby or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they do definitely have their effect outside of Coherence or outside of Portal Mountain.
Like I'm thinking of them as more like an underlying structure, you know?
Yeah. Well, similar to we have the absurd there or whatever.
Yeah. So there would be between the absurd and the main level.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was gonna get a pen.
Or on the same level as the absurd, divided into four, like the other. I don't know what's better.
Right.
I think that makes more sense actually, because that's how the other ones are done. Yeah, it's simpler to digest. Less levels, same amount of levels, basically. Just um, four bubbles taken out of one level and moved to another. That's all it is.
Just trying to pull up that image. We shared it at the obelisk. Okay.
So at this point, we have a kind of like an underlying structure that's kind of impersonal. And then as soon as you reach the ground level, it all comes together as an inner and outer space, where you have the outer space dominated by these chaos, order, um, state, and uncertainty.
Right.
And as you move inwards, it becomes more and more coherent with Portal Mountain.
Yeah, because we're moving the dichotomy or whatever is between the absurd and the grandmaster, if you want to look at it that way. So there is kind of an inside and outside to it.
Hmm. It's like a two-dimensional or three-dimensional element to it.
And all of these are in the absurd stack. The chaos, state, space, time, decay, uncertainty. Wait, no, we don't have the elements. They aren't like that. Some of them are there, but consolidation, is that in the absurd
Our
stack?
elements are space-time, um,
Consolidation and decay.
decay. So space-time is Earth, fire is decay, consolidation is water, and air is. See, that's the time factor of space.
Yeah, didn't we split space and time up?
Not as a primordial.
Oh yeah, right.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's like another layer of that primordial. There's the space level and there's the time level.
Mm. Yeah, which is fine because we see the same thing reflected in like the cosmos and the narrative.
Yeah.
Like they're basically, there's not one without the other.
It's like that, the lord of that.
Hmm.
Right, and each one is a different facet. The Lord. Sorry, irresistible. You're being recorded. Your face
Who?
is gonna be on the internet.
Who's that?
Who's who's what?
Who are you talking to? Oh, Cohen.
Yes, I'm talking to Cohen.
Hi, Cohen.
Yep, that's the life.
Yep. Okay, so um, so what do we want to do with that, with the map? What's
uh, so the map should stand on its own, obviously, in a way, visually, right?
mm,
So that you can learn from it. That's the artifact.
well, I mean, the map, this is a core map. Like map in its generic cosmological sense expands into everything.
Right. So you study this map, you get its meaning, and then you start to see how it relates to guild building. Because this is a map of the guild.
hmm Yeah, it's a map of the of describing coherence,
Hmm.
which is at that's what I mean by at the core, because everything can be described in terms of coherence.
Hmm. Right. So that's what the guild is built like, versus the natural guild stack is going to be needs to be incorporated into this in terms of like in this location this is what's learned, in this location this is what's learned, right? Um,
Hmm.
right, because like these spaces they're not just there to muse at.
Right, and
So that's how you'd incorporate the natural guild stack into it.
it's going to be a little bit arbitrary or seemingly arbitrary, like how we um, to get to get some of the initial protocols, we simply looked at um, what the plateaus of commodification and
Hmm.
tried to um, use that as um, a template, I guess, or a starting point for how you would do similar things and have a similar achievements of a group coherence using um, like isomorphic protocols. So, but that it seems arbitrary in a way. Like there's no real starting point. You don't say learn this and learn that. It's like here's a pile of things you could learn.
Right, right. But it's just a different way to educate, right? That again, this is all within the framework of the natural guild stack because this is just a progression of education itself, right? So in this case, what I'm saying is that you start off with this map as a point of education,
Mm-hmm.
and you sort of express how it's all laid out, and then you give the reasons behind all of these different notations, and then that's
Mm-hmm.
how the spaces make sense, right? So this is why you go west for this or north for that, up for this, and up west and
Mm.
up north,
Yeah.
that kind of deal, right? So that'll be your navigation through it, but you'll see it all at once in your abstract, pragmatic way. You have a clear path.
Mm.
To reach destination, follow these nodes. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Well, generally, yeah, but I'd like to get more specific somehow.
Well, we'll have to cover the specifics after we hash out if our an agreement at least or some form of starting point, right? We got to anchor it. As always, we got to just write something down. You're telling me this yourself, by the way. Write it down. So
Uh-huh.
let's start with
Oh,
that
that's
being the direction we're taking. Like not in the me pushing it kind of way, but in like if you don't disagree, and how should I frame it? Like, is this a good direction?
well, I like the direction of like going with program zero as kind of a starting point, and then you have like um, starting off with basically an introduction even to education, even as you're being educated about education. It's kind of like an example of itself.
Mhm.
But then you immediately go into health. And why do you go into health? Because you can't do anything else if you don't have health. So it kind of like people want to go neurotic and know like, oh, what's the secret of the universe, or like
Yeah.
whatever they're after. But meanwhile, it's like, okay, here's the first step. If you don't have health, you have no ability to do anything.
So yeah, yeah. So this is
So
the
it's
case
like
with any temperament, though. Like,
it's a grounding.
I know,
That's why I like that direction.
I know, I know. What I'm suggesting, though, is that in terms to achieve this, in terms of the path through Portal Mountain,
hmm
right? The pragmatic temperament uses the Portal Mountain map to educate themselves. Now, what are they educating themselves in? Exactly the same thing that you're describing, but how is the question I'm trying to answer. The how begins with the map of Portal Mountain, actually.
Yeah,
So this is the point of education about education that you're making.
and the map is going to include the natural guilds,
Exactly, exactly. So
of
like,
course.
right. At that, it's going to be at that point where you're going to be told things along the lines of, well, see, this map is closer related to the holarchy, right? The heteroholarchy.
hmm And which map is that?
Hold on, the Portal Mountain map. Let me make sure I'm correct on this. It's temperaments and coherence, which directly correlate to layers.
The coherence, you mean?
Right, right. So it's from organism up to society, or no, from the environment all the way up to society. And the first environment you encounter is the narrative, um, in terms of.
Mm.
Hold on. No, I'm mixing something up here. I had it all like figured out yesterday, and now it's a little blurry. Because what we want to do is we want to lead back to the whole health thing, right? And then the environment and whatnot. So we got to
Yeah.
do it in terms of well, you are a traveler through Portland Mountain in terms of coherence and in terms of temperament. Your temperament is obviously pragmatic more than anything else, but everything else is included, which is why it's inside your map.
hmm
Um, so you need to know what everything in the map is in order to navigate it and climb the coherence ladder. So you learn all that, right?
Uh-huh.
So as a matter of pragmatism, to be able to do those things, you need to be able to have a healthy mental state, which is involved in a healthy physical state,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you still lead into it. You just lead into it from a different degree, from a different angle, right?
Cool.
You still say essentially the exact same thing. In order to be able to do this, you need to be able to be
Yeah.
healthy. You need to be capable. So whichever way you
Mm-hmm.
want to twist it, the natural guilds kind of still overlay everything. The progression anyway. It's interesting. Like it's harder and harder for me to see the differences between the pragmatic path outside of first principles versus just being told what to do. Like a mentor typically shouldn't just tell you what to do. It should, but at the same time, it should. So I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to look like. I don't know. I haven't really sorted out the pragmatic temperament's trajectory. I'm wondering if that's something that you might be able to tackle or help tackle with me. You all right? Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about this before, kind of like trying to generally or generically map the temperament, a temperament's path,
So
which you can't really do, but um, at least for our presentation within Portal Mound, there has to be something. So, like you said, the pragmatic wants to know about the system, how all the parts work together, what are the pieces. But in order to even study this, you need health, like these kind of entrances.
So I think okay, no, I think I know what my point of confusion is on all of this.
What's that?
See, both the pragmatic and the devotional, not to mention the perceptive, they all share the cosmology, they all share the compass, right? Those are elements that are ubiquitous to them. They're not necessarily one belongs to one and the other to the other. It's it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's like one circle divided either this way or that way.
Well, you're with program zero, you're basically saying the same thing. But if you want to explain it to a devotional, you're going to put emphasis on different things.
I know. So exactly, and that's what I'm trying to get through here. And I'm making the mistake of making that map part of the pragmatism in terms of do this, do that, do the other thing, and that's not the way it's going to go. In fact, I believe I'm sincerely wrong on this in the saying that studying that map is going to be what is
What
going.
everyone's gonna need.
Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
What?
So
Yeah.
so maybe perhaps I've overstepped there, and because I'm trying to think of like a Zen itself, right? Like, but going back to like a more traditional approach to this thing. And that's not what they do. They don't study like the big cosmology, even though it's all set in it. You know,
Yeah.
they study literally the natural guilds. That would be what they're doing. It's like, okay, so now add this, now add that, now add this. The difference between that and a devotional is that in a devotional, the only thing they're doing is they're chanting program zero, program zero, ideally. I'm just talking like in an idealized sense, right? So on devotion, a participant is participating because it's constantly reminding themselves to
Yeah.
constrain their protocols.
Yeah. But constrain it how to answer that question? What
It's
do you
it,
actually?
it's externalized.
That's where
It's more
you.
externalized. It's more top down. That's where you
Uh,
go to sermons, and that's where you go to counseling sessions,
yeah.
and
But you need the map somehow.
that.
Somehow you have to get it.
So the map is going to get to you through your counselor or through your. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the reason for um, the different temperaments is because you have people who are going to get on into participation by a completely different um, like interception of their reality or whatever. Like some people are going to be, they know what it means to have a commitment and to do something. And once you say you're going to do it, then you do it. And okay, now I said I'm going to start reciting this. I'm going to bring um, God into my life or whatever, whoever's
Hmm.
going to say whatever. And then they do it, but they don't know what that means because God is obviously very broad. But through this action of commitment, you continually encounter and stumble into these experiences of the map.
Right, right,
You you start to see pieces.
right. Your it, the external entity is the representation of the map of the internal map.
Sure, yeah.
No, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, except you're given like the archetype or however you would want to say. Uh, so like top down.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
focus on something that's so broad and encompassing without knowing any of the pieces yet, except that one piece which points to the whole thing.
And you trust the crap out of it.
Hmm.
Yep.
So
So,
that's good for a devotional
mhm.
because it's it's packing the whole potential into something you can commit to.
Oh yeah.
Even though you don't know what it is, you're given that the top down the uppermost symbol, and you can commit to it. Whereas from the bottom up, you want to start seeing all the pieces, and they have to really come together before you're even willing to um, give that system like a shot. You don't know what the system, or you can't follow it if you don't know what you're following, right? That kind of like
Yeah, yeah. So
the
here's
faith
where you'd
aspect.
be told to do what the content of the guild is, and versus how the guilds are structured. You'd be told things like, okay, yeah, no, health is something that you need to pay attention to. It interact, or rather, the discussion we had at the obelisk of the areas of concern and the right how they can be their interrelationships. You
So
basically are being told how to build yourself up
um,
versus being told what to do. Although, like they say, they kind of they start to cross each other so bad It's just gonna be like it's all gonna be down to how it's delivered,
Hmm.
not what's delivered really.
That's up to the guide to
Ex- ex-
perceive what the student is attaching to, or what they're grasping onto.
exactly, yeah.
Uh, okay, cool. So I'm wondering about the Portal Mountain map and how we have the absurd in technically half unfolded and also as its own unit at the bottom. So like it's half unfolded into, we have state here, decay, which I guess is another word for entropy.
No, it's for fire.
Um, okay, fine. So how do we reconcile that? Why is it like um,
So,
element
so pure
and
potentiality
archetype?
underlies everything.
Sure. Can we map these together, like the elements and the
So what I
archetypes?
was saying is I want to move the elements down to the same layer as the absurd,
Okay.
and then it'll kind of like be sort of like a point, a pyramid kind of deal from an upside down pyramid, right? If you look at the external wall, do you see that?
External wall.
So like the edge, the external edge of the pyramid, and if you were to move, shit, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm thinking in both the old image and the new image. um,
I'm just looking right at the chart that's posted.
yeah, I know. What I want you to imagine is the four elements: the time, space, the
Decay, consolidation.
decay and consolidation. They are all taken out of that layer and moved
Yep.
one step lower beside beside uncertainty, right?
Um,
And that's sort of like the system that underlies everything.
you mean beside the absurd, coming out of the absurd.
Right, right. Sorry, wow, getting distracted a little bit.
That's fine.
Um, yeah, exactly as you said. This like around, like encircling the absurd, just like like the outer hall encircles the academy or something like that. Just the same relationships.
Yep. Yep. They are concentric or whatever, if you want to say.
Yeah, so the most bottom layer there is basically of pure potentiality.
Hmm.
It's completely neutral. Like, it can go dysmorphic as any moment. The next layer is when things start mixing, right? You're left with only the outer edge being the chaos,
The
the
portal
order.
layer.
Hmm?
Do you mean the portal mountain layer, or what? Or outwards? We have state, chaos, uncertainty, and order. Why only those four? Like I know that's what we map them like
So
onto.
the edges and the full house. So if you take the
Uh,
entire stack of primordials,
is that
the
the entire stack though?
uh, chaos and order is the entire stack divided in half.
Right.
Um, and uncertainty and uncertainty and order are the two edge ones.
Okay, so we don't have corporation here.
No,
Oh,
because that's like part of or order.
okay, so primordial archetypes. We have
It's like
state,
it's a chaos. A chaos
core.
culminates.
Yeah,
Culminates in uncertainty, or order culminates in state. That's sort of the idea there.
cool. Human and animal. Death, life, matter. Space-time, entropy, uncertainty. Okay, and so from the absurd, then we would have, so we have space and time. Space-time, consolidation, decay. And so does it make sense that that we have so order and chaos, state and uncertainty, those are dependent on the elements? What does that relationship mean that they are sticking out further and not directly connected to the absurd? Is there a significance?
Sorry, say that again.
The fact that um, chaos comes through time, state comes through space, order comes through consolidation, uncertainty comes through decay. Um, are they
That's
not?
no. Once those move down, they're not going to be coming through any of those.
That's what I mean.
We're removing that relationship. I
So
didn't think that it's just the first attempt, right? So
yeah, I know that that's how we were kind of it's correspondences we were mapping out basically.
yeah.
So I'm still trying to normalize this chart then. So from the absurd, we have all eight coming out.
No,
All eight,
the absurd is just going to have
just the elements,
just the
or
elements coming out of it. And notice that none of the elements are any of the primordial archetypes.
hmm
Even space and time are not primordials. They are something beyond that. So those are coming through from above it. Um,
Yep.
I'm gonna pause for a minute.
Okay.
So, where were we?
Um, we were at.
We're kind of discussing the primordial archetypes and their relationships.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just wanted to sort of wrap that up. There's this kind of like loop going on between them among them in that the same level of the elements, right? The representations of forces of chaos and forces of order and forces of state and forces of uncertainty,
Mhm.
because that's really all the elements are. So there's basically two representations of that in the next layer up, right? So out of the center, you have the the not dysmorphic, but um, the primordial, I guess, variation, and then you have the isomorphic variation. Primordial being like either order or chaos or excuse me, or state or uncertainty, whereas the isomorphic ones will be your prototypical objects, the bonfire, the obelisk, the
Right. Yeah.
embassy, and all of that. So that's kind of what's going on there. because then you're only left with two if we made the modification, right?
Okay, so I'm still trying to map this out better. So the triads, death, life, and matter, space-time, entropy, uncertainty, those are what we are summing up as chaos primordial, right?
Mhm.
Also, machine, human, animal. We consider that order.
Sorry.
Machine, human, and animal. Remember I remember you'd brought it up like as a bridge between chaos and order. Are we making that distinction or bothering to? We're just saying the bridge itself is a part of order.
It's just half and half, basically. I was thinking about it.
Hmm. Okay, chaos and order. Okay, and then we had state and, oh, there's Eon.
Yep.
He has appeared, but I can't hear him.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Greetings, welcome.
Hey,
How's it going, man?
to see you guys.
Sounds better. You got new headphones?
No, I'm just holding it right next to my mouth.
Okay, and you're indoor as well.
Yes, and I'm indoors.
Nice. So chaos, order, state. We're just going over, we're looking at that map that we made of Portal Mountain and comparing it with the primordial archetypes and
Hmm.
Or
trying to
rather, why they're even there, kind of deal.
fix that up a little bit. Um,
Yeah, it's the last one, buddy. It's my life. Here's the other one.
So, did y'all hop on at 12:50 about as soon as those?
No, no, we started wait.
it's not even been an hour yet.
Yeah, 1:45 ish.
An hour then, yeah.
No, connecting headset is like 150.
Less
Oh,
than.
so it's 2:50 for y'all right now.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
so
man, yeah, I was
you didn't miss too
uh
much.
yeah, like I said, like I made a little leeway into it, and then like it started it started dancing circles around me and shit. So I was like, you know, I need to integrate a little bit before.
I keep saying it's loopy.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely loopy. I'm not, but I kind of meditated after we last was talking, and I was like, well, you know, when you talked about how the Grand Master is like pure potentiality, essentially, like
Isomorphic.
thinking about how the yeah, yeah, like the pure I like how for one in a question I had in a purely isomorphic state, would you be saying everything that like is on your mind, like would the words that you're thinking ever differ from the words you're speaking?
That's interesting. There is no purely isomorphic state. It's kind of an ideal you work towards. And as far as saying something that's on your mind, that's a matter of skill. So sometimes something on your mind just comes out, bubbles out of chaos, right? And it's like not it's not a good thought or an idea that you want to put into the shared.
Well, hold on. What are you defining as something that's on your mind? Because here's an example that comes straight away to me. Somebody else says something and you know what it means, so that's on your mind. But like, does that necessarily mean that's dysmorphic, or is that just something that's needs saying, or like the fact that you heard something? Do you need to repeat that you heard it? You know what I mean? Like, where do you draw the line of
Well,
if of saying what's on your mind?
yeah, yeah, I'll agree. There are different levels. Like sometimes a song will just start playing for whatever reason. I'm not saying like, yeah, yeah, like you wouldn't just start singing that just because it's playing in your mind. But there's also situations where things sometimes should be said, and it would be like courageous to say certain things, or
Well,
So
courageous is a matter of
that's
perspective
probably
as well.
that's probably
well, yeah,
where we want to
yeah,
get to. So if let's talk about for a second judgment, which is you see a situation happening or you see somebody doing some kind of behavior and it doesn't look like something they should be doing. Um, it's a matter of skill as to whether you can even come up with something that's actually going to bring them towards isomorphism, or will they just become offended and not talk to you at all anymore,
Well,
right?
judgment is inherently dysmorphic to the model. Sorry, I don't mean it's dysmorphic entirely. Like to like, let me rephrase that. Great. So, a state of judgment is in contrast to the end state of the Lynchman protocol. So this whole severance of the empathetic sympathetic complex, the proximity complex, where
Hmm.
it severs from the pinball machine, as I like to call it. So that idea happens because only because you're only ever empathetic to a narrative and you're sympathetic to all artifacts, right? So
Yeah.
any form of judgment is actually a form of dysmorphic empathy because you're empathizing with the person as yourself, get disgusted with that, as
Yeah,
in
no,
I'd never do that, and
that's not what I meant.
then you get
I,
like a reaction from that.
I see what you're saying, and that's obviously not the not uh, proper use. That's the typical use of judgment.
You mean discernment maybe?
So yeah, fine discernment. What I'm talking about is you're presuming for a moment some sort of guide relationship, as if you're presuming yourself to be a guide in some sense. But no, whatever the coherence is of that person who you want to guide their behavior and help them to become more coherent, right? That's what
Mhm.
I'm talking about. So whether that's going to be received or not, and whether your guidance is going to come across in a skillful way that actually moves towards isomorphism, um, I think this is a great context to ask that question. Should you just say anything that you want to say at any time because it's on your mind and it's isomorphic? No, because it depends on the relationship that you have with another person. First off, do they even trust you to take what you're saying and do something proper with it, or do you need
So
to facilitate that first?
yeah, so and to just extend that a little thought a bit further, we already have a basis for it, and that's just basically the right speech portion of Buddhism that I'm going to base a lot of stuff on. Um, so that's just for program's sake. Like I've been writing Program Zero, as we all now love and take to heart, right?
yeah.
Yes, yes. This is yes. And sorry, just joking around.
Doing pretty good so far.
And so I've written that second program, the perspective one. So this is going to be another program essentially, and that it's going to have a lot of elements as like the actual scripture it's based on is just fairly pragmatic in its own way. Um, it's basically saying something along the lines of like, is it correct, but is it unkind? Um, if that's the case, then probably don't say it. If it's correct and kind, find the correct time to say it. So even at the point of like a positive, it's just almost like even then, stop yourself before you say it. Just keep to making sure that it's even the appropriate time and stuff like that. So that's sort of like the direction I'm leaning towards with
And then
that
there's the
question.
way to say it.
The way
Like
to
if you just walk up to everybody and like, dude, you got to align the guild to the archetype via the model. And like, you know,
align your loop back, bro.
yeah, like uh, align the stack, and here's a map to Four
Okay.
Mountain. It's a holographic mandala that.
No, no, no,
Uh,
no, don't never say Mandela. That's the triggering word right there.
oh yeah, it is. It triggered me too when you said it earlier. Because I was like, wait, I'm watching Joseph Campbell. He's saying, and I agree with him that Mandelas are an artifact of a certain structure of human
um,
social.
so one thing that Joseph Campbell isn't is Buddhist. So his mandala is very Hindu in its conception, or its purpose rather. He lumps the two together, saying that yes, they hit on very similar points because it's a very deep meditative tradition, right? And once you get to that kind of meditation, you will converge on the commonalities of the human psyche. Just like why wouldn't you, right? But
Yeah,
the problem is, and I agree with Buddhism on that, is it it doesn't go far enough like the Hindu stuff. It just stops short of penetrating the last barriers. It stops at this ground of existence, right?
Brahman.
Yeah, and gives it a kind of like a sort of like ground zero role, and that's kind of where the fundamental difference is that it's not ground zero. It's just sort of like a horizon. There's more sort of beyond this veil of pure consciousness, if you will, or whatnot, and that is actually more causal, um more granular, more impersonal, more sort of like non-self, non-selfhoodly, um, funhouse mirrors, reflecting mirrors, internet kind of ordeal, right? So it's like basically the idea that there's more beyond that veil, and that's I think is not something that Campbell ever been able to understand, right? So we're sort of beyond that veil. We're toying with stuff that transcends that idea entirely, right? There's no
Yeah.
unified anything. If you noticed, our your model is completely fragmented and yet somehow flows, and that's due to this isomorphic effect, right? It's not because um, scientifically this is that. It's because this maps to that. That's all there is to it. And why? Just because that's the way my mind works. Why is that? It just does. Like it's not. That's we're not here to prove anything to anybody. That's kind of like if you want to, you can prove it to yourself. So that's the difficulty of everything as well. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now. Uh,
Well, I mean, trying to prove it to yourself is kind of like part of the process, right? I mean, it's how it's like part of the protocols that allow more. That's why I was asking earlier, like, uh, because we was talking about from the absurdity to grandmaster, like it's coherence to what that you are journeying along, like perceptually.
So that's kind of like the same question is like asking like where in the Buddhist doctrine about the not self. If like there's no self, what goes from life to life kind of deal, right? What reincarnates? That's the most common question in Buddhism. So you're kind of asking the same thing here.
So it's just coherence to,
Just
To
coherence,
isomorphism
capital coherence.
itself. This
yeah,
is a
just
distinction
coherent.
that,
Yeah, okay.
sorry, that we kind of talked about recently. Isomorphism with a capital I, or capital I, capital S, capital O. It's not to anything. It's isomorphism to itself.
Yeah, so the
Whereas
self-reference of a loop.
whereas isomorphism used with a lowercase I would be the more mathematical uh, way from its mathematical origins, where you're saying that one set, a system of one set, can be transformed or translated to another set, like a language. You can say something in one language and you can say the same thing in another language, and there's an isomorphism between them, which is the relationships between the words are forming a
The meanings,
similar
yeah.
pattern of meaning. So whereas isomorphism with a capital I, um, you don't actually need to distinguish what it's isomorphic to. It's simply isomorphic with everything else, or
Right.
Okay.
with itself, in
It's
other
the
words.
funhouse system essentially. Right. It's
Okay.
just a reflection of reflections.
Okay, and that's kind of okay because I was getting to.
Like music. Okay, take a music to for example. Music is resonant to what? To itself, right? When you have music playing, different instruments are playing. What are they resonant to? Each other, not something external to themselves, right? Like sure, to each individual instrument is external to each other instrument, but the music pattern is resonant to itself.
And through the body, eardrum, brain.
Well, I'm just trying to keep it simple so that the image is simple.
But you can't contain, it's similar, you can't contain it.
Sure, sure. I'm not debating you. Simply saying like if we can stop there and see um what the relationship is with the capital isomorphism um versus what is this isomorphic to for the lowercase.
hmm
So
Just not a crazy concept.
no, yeah, no, that clarified it quite a bit because I you know I kind of like I kind of I painted this image, the one that's green, and I painted it yesterday. I kind of do this thing where I just be like painting random stuff and kind of like retroactively assigning representative meaning to it. Like
Hmm.
so, I kind of assume being like a quine that I'm kind of reflexively putting out the contents of my own psyche or whatever. So like I was thinking today and like that structure is like lining up and it's like but it's also like tendriling out on the side. So it's kind of like I, I'm taking to the model and everything like that. This whole program or whatever.
Lincoln, give.
But at the same time, I'm like tendriling out, like not, you know what I'm saying, like keeping open to like, you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
like I check out what Eris is doing, and I check out what Lucid's doing,
Oh yeah, for sure.
and so it kind of like affects the uniformity of the structure and possibly even coherence itself, you know.
Hmm.
Well,
But
this.
You
I'm
gotta get one.
hoping eventually it will like metatize into a larger coherence later on. Like,
Can I see that picture or your painting again?
yeah, I see it kind of like,
Hmm. Yep, it's definitely like a personal, individual thing, but you end up resonating with other people.
yeah, I think that, and I have people, like I had a friend, it was funny because I had a friend come over and he started painting this. He's like, he's a wargaming nerd, so he was painting like mountains and shit. At the same time, I'm over here painting a fucking planet, and he's the one that realized he looked. He's like, dude, I'm painting the territory or whatever, and you're painting the whole planet. Like it was a sense of we were like kind of harmonizing,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but also we were on different scopes. Because he started off painting the
yeah.
tree, so he went from the tree, and we started talking about shit. I get people in here, start talking to him, and then he moved on to painting that, and I wasn't even looking at what he was painting at all, but it turned in, you know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
it kind of so it was really interesting exercise in getting something across. I don't know exactly what, but it's I just was tired of having white walls.
Hmm. I don't think my wife would let me do that.
Well, I'm so lucky to be unburdened by those
Yeah,
sort of relational uh,
constraints, if you will.
constraints, constrained protocols.
Guild
uh,
humor, yo. Guild humor.
Yep.
yo, I'm really wanting to put get these mail bombs out and
Don't call them that, by the way.
I,
Constrained.
constrained. Okay, yeah, these flyers, these flyers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Meme bombs,
well, they're yeah they're like anti bombs essentially because
right?
like whereas a physical bomb creates chaos and destruction,
Division.
these are like
Yeah.
more order and shit, or
Yep.
like structure. It's building. But anywho, I'm just it's because that video that I made the other day was about a guy sending a bomb in the mail to someone else, and so I was like trying to follow that. But anyways, I was wanting y'all's input, if at all possible, on because I was thinking maybe it should be like a riddle or something, you know?
Oh yes, because people want nothing more than to spend energy on things they don't understand.
Yeah. Well,
I just saying, it's just never been my experience that.
You have to hook them first. You have to get some type of commitment
Yeah.
before the.
that's what I'm talking. Like there might be a. If I send out 100, there might be a. If I send out 1,000, one of them might hit somebody that will actually give a damn about it.
How do you decide who to send to? Do you have a network going
I,
on, or
I'm no, I'm gonna do a random process where I just take a bunch of
pick an address?
addresses and put them in a hat. Yeah.
Oh God.
Pick a street, pick a number.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have time to speak to your Lord and Savior, the Grand Master?
No, I'm just gonna throw a grip of them into the post box and just
No,
having a seat.
I know. It just reminds me
Well,
of
yeah, yeah.
sitting on the street there, just sir, sir, chase him down. You know, it's like
Yeah, and that's and
maybe
that's
tackle them a
why
little bit.
and that's why this system being using this non-triggering language like
Well,
might be more effective than people might not understand that that's essentially what it is, you
Remember,
know.
Jenya, one of our advertisements, you could incorporate something like this, but it started something that to the tune of, "Do you hate the problem?"
I remember a
Why,
YouTube
yes, I
video
do
you
hate the
made.
problem. Tell me more.
You have the solution. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like a
Well,
solution? Do you like
and that's
solutions?
I saw that YouTube video you put out where you was shoveling the snow into the
Oh
bird
yeah.
feeder and then taking it out and
Into the
like
what?
it was like a bird feeder or
The
something,
bird
wasn't it?
bath.
Or bird bath, yeah. What was you saying? Like you're not
Was
gonna
it?
be aware of the happenings or the
It
events
was
or
the current event.
the current event. Yeah, yeah.
I should watch
And
that again.
No, no, no.
it was
Go away.
it was a couple years ago that I saw it, but it was just like it made me laugh, and I didn't I had
Uh,
no idea what it was about.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there was another commercial you did with the radio one. It was like a podcast. Wasn't it like a
Oh
conversation between
yeah.
Anders
That one's on the
Amy?
on their podcast.
Yeah.
oh,
What was?
old Brian, he's all over the internet, man.
Oh man,
Which
yeah.
yeah, right.
He was my gateway into thoughts too.
What was that one
Oh,
about?
man.
Oh, it was about propaganda, and the product was propaganda itself or something. I can't remember.
Hmm.
It was fun times.
I may have a script for it somewhere.
But what I'm thinking is, man, these kids are getting some crazy memes up in their head now, and who knows what that's gonna retroactively
Yeah, lots of
form
suffering.
into later on.
Which
Yeah,
kids now? Sorry, which kids are we talking about now?
Yours,
the
like they're hearing all the lingo and stuff, and it's like it means absolutely nothing, but like years and years down the line, like they might take like LSD or something, and like it might all come back, and
It's like, wait,
hmm.
the model.
yeah, that's how it happened with me. Like stuff that I hadn't heard in years and years, like plugged into other shit, and
Yeah.
that's
Well,
I'm trying to get to the level where I can like understand, exactly how because like we're trying to talk to other people, and I'm literally talking to this person right now. She's convinced that a little person lives in her heart, but she's also convinced that the sun is fake. So
And
I'm
what
like,
does
how
that?
do I get on this person's level?
What does it even matter if the sun is fake or not? Like, what am
That's
I
what
gonna?
I'm saying. Like you are in my mind. In my mind, it's like it's a subconscious crying out of like deep down that there's not a little person living in your heart. So instead of looking within and coming to grips with it, you're looking up in the sky like the sun's not real. The heat is like
it's
just
it's
looking
a government
everywhere else except
it's a
for the problem.
it's a governmental conspiracy, man. That circle in the
It
sky.
is, man. That's what she's saying. Like, I'm trying to talk to her about this shit, and it's like until you stop going on about how the sun is a simulation, and then I'm a bad guy. Like I'm an agent, like trying to get her to ignore the key issues or some shit. It's like
Well, it could be schizophrenia.
I
Yeah.
think I
It's
think she
just
does meth. I think she does methamphetamines too, pretty
Mm.
often. So
Oh well,
Can
But I make no like if I try to trace back how I was able to go from the point where everything that was being said here was gibberish to it making some semblance of sense,
hmm
it's kind of difficult to trace that in a way where I can leverage it in
Yeah, because
my
it's totally unique to your experience, right?
yeah.
mm. So
Yeah.
sorry. I think I said this a couple of times, but I don't think I said it clearly enough. This language, it's a, I don't know if you've noticed this. The whole system almost is almost like a template, the meta system, right? So
Yeah.
it's not necessary to use it directly as is.
No, and I never do. I never when I'm talking to like I communicate all the same ideas that I understand, but not ever in those terms.
Yeah. So like at church, for instance, I never use the word guild. I use the word
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
right? Because
Which
that
I mean,
makes sense.
church means gathering, and
Right. No, and that's because that's what the language is supposed to be. It's supposed to be um this template thing that you can transform into this, into that, into the other thing. Um, then just keep going like that, and that's by design. So when you're talking to a Buddhist, you should actually transform everything into Buddhism. If you're talking to a Christian, into Christianity. If you're talking to a
hmm
triggered scientismist, leave it as is, and maybe just elaborate kind of deal, right? And try to maybe not go to a more, maybe simplify some terms and stuff like that. And
But in either case, um, you're still not you're still not directly taking a model and throwing it at them. You're
mm,
guiding them by realizing or trying to figure out where they're at in their own story and how they're even going to latch on to your presentation, whether what their temperament might be, and you're interfacing with like this slipstream of reality. You're not just throwing a model around.
yeah, so
yeah,
actually it's
yeah.
a very
Like,
empathetic
hmm
process.
I'm trying to operate right now on the assumption that almost any model can do what it needs to do. Like that's what it appears like through Christianity and Hinduism, Buddhism, and everything. Like the model can lead to the archetype,
Hmm.
if it's, but not if it's like followed linearly. It has to be like
Exactly.
you have to look like between the lines and stuff, and apply like critical thinking to certain aspects of it. Like
Yeah.
so, it's
Yeah,
like when I talk to someone who's fundamentally Christian, and that's the only you're not gonna they won't parse anything that's not in that model. There's like a gatekeeper of like authority that like
You're
they will
telling
only
me,
accept like
it's
yeah,
a matter
yeah,
of coherence.
yeah,
If
exactly.
their
And so it's
coherence
like
arises within that system, then yes, they will be able to relax their guard on their usage of words and
but I think without introducing the
um,
Gnostic
I need.
apocrypha.
Can you guys, do you mind if I pause for like a minute or two? I need to fill up a bottle for a little one.
No, yeah,
sure.
it's all right.
All right.
So, but yeah, I think that's the general like the gatekeeper of Christianity that is, in my mind, blocking the uh, the advancement that is the most beneficial to isomorphism is they cannot get past Christ is my leader and I am his follower, and like and even in the regular Bible it's like I try to tell him like he says it right there that we can call God Father. We will
Yeah.
do works greater than Him. Like
So
I think that it's there, but it's so ingrained that
so that's kind of we kind of account for that actually in our description of isomorphism and with dysmorphism itself, in that whenever you break the loop, right? Whenever you break the loop, that's when you get this kind of severance of like can't sort of wrap your head around, because that's that's like a symptom of what we basically term calcification, when you turn these loops into hierarchies, right? All of a
Hmm.
sudden, the top is the only thing that matters, and
and
everything
it's
else,
unattainable.
hmm?
And it's unattainable.
It's unattainable, and you are completely subservient to it, and really you're nothing. It is everything, right? So
Yeah.
that that
It turns one looping system into multiple loops. Like God, Christ, and the Holy Spirit is one loop or
well,
whatever, and then
the
you're
actual Holy Spirit itself, the concept itself, should be the basic clue as to the loop exists, still being retained and just being completely ignored by
Hmm.
just current rhetoric. And that is basically, what is the Holy Spirit if not your inner voice? And that inner voice comes from below, not from above. It comes, it's part of your animal self, right? Comes through.
well,
It's the
that's
voice in your kind of comes through what? Through your instinct. It's what God speaks to you.
but that's hard to convince people of. That's hard to convince people of too, because a
I'm
lot
not
of people
trying,
think that that voice does come from above. Well, not to convince, but
but
a
it's
lot of people do think that that voice comes from above.
your ex. But the
Like
doctrine is
they
you
have
accept
they
the
have
Holy Spirit and let it speak from within you, and that is how you become Christ-like, by being in this the constant contact with the Spirit, which allows you to sort of uh, be focused on the Father, right? Like this triad of thing. It's exactly the same linchpin that is necessary, except everybody's ignoring it, like you're saying, and that is due to just not understanding that there is a loop. Like you're saying, they think it's from above because they don't get that they're breaking a loop. I'm saying that there is a loop. It's above going below and coming back up, right? That's how the cycle is.
yeah. I definitely think that the loop's definitely there. It's just yeah, it's just
So you do that for Christians, and
it's just
and you put it back together for them like that, and I think it's pretty much done in terms of convincing them to practice properly. The rest is the rest is like everybody else, like how coherent you'd be with going forward. So everybody's got their own strengths and weaknesses on that. Make sense?
so moving away from evangelism. Yes. What was the what was the didn't we have some things that we were wanting to didn't we leave our last meeting off with some things we were wanting to hit up the next meeting that were did
Yeah,
y'all get to any of those?
I think one of them is organizing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, organizing.
I forget what.
Were those written down or I know they were recorded on the YouTube video. I think one of them was didn't Brian say you wanted to like go into backgrounds or some kind of
Oh, like
uh
how did we get where we are?
like yeah, like
Right.
narrative introductions or something like that.
Yeah, it could help. Um, I don't know if I feel really focused on that right now. Um, I wanted to get
No,
the structure of that Portal Mountain map that we made
Hmm.
and connect it more coherently
okay, yeah.
with the elements.
Right. Didn't we finish pretty much doing that?
Mm, not really. Not
All
really.
we're doing is extracting it from one layer and putting it in another.
Okay, so if that's what we want to focus on next, we could.
I mean, I could explain the reasoning behind it again.
Oh, and also I wasn't here for that.
Yeah, that's true too.
Just trying to organize it a bit better. Some things don't seem to fit exactly where they're supposed to be. So we're sorting that out now.
Anything else we could go over, or like I also wanted to talk about strategy, overall strategy, and consolidating the kind of um, consolidating Portal Mountain or normalizing it. For example, so that each of our chat rooms, they all have an introduction or whatever pinned, and you can access any of the documents from
Yeah,
each
so I have a document regarding that on the archive, right?
regarding
What you're talking
so
about right now. Like,
the archive, you say.
yeah, last one you posted. I know because I forwarded it before.
You don't mean the guild archive. The guild
Yeah.
archive. Okay, there's a last thing posted there is Arg Idea by Eon.
Oh no, not that.
That was in
Before that.
December.
Last thing you posted probably.
Before that, there's the documents, and there's the Portal Mountain, that ARG document that I made to try and consolidate things together.
That's the one. That's your starting point, right?
Oh yeah, I thought you said something that you made.
Nope. I said
Uh,
you made.
we did work together on that though, but
No, you put that one together. I don't. I've never
so,
seen it before, which is how I know.
yeah, but um, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm more sensitive in guild speak or whatever in that the the corporation or the state that we create together. I prefer to give credit to everywhere, everywhere
Well,
possible.
yeah, like it's just some most of my way of saying I is just habit. It's not.
Yeah.
I did it. Me.
So this is a very old document, super
Yeah,
old.
but it's still relevant. Like I read through it, and it's there's very little that might not be relevant in it.
Okay, okay. Um, oh, actually, yeah, we did have. Looks like I put together a checklist of things that we were gonna do. So,
Yep.
like deploying the Telegram chat network, that's done. Creating a document for each area, that's apparently done. Although it's not filled in, we didn't. Like there are links to Google Docs for each area,
Mhm.
but there's nothing in them.
Okay, so it's not done.
No, no.
Unless the task is to simply literally just create them.
Well, the task is to have something more coherent so that when new people come along, no matter which part of Portal Mountain they encounter, they can easily get to the broader, like they can just see the map and go from place to place.
Yeah.
Um, clarify the compass, clarify the map, clarify the manual. We've been doing that.
Yeah, I think those have been pretty. I mean, the level of clarification that came to the fore upon that introduction in the Great Bonfire with
Mhm.
Botch, you know, like really looking at it in terms of that specific narrative of the runaway commodification. And I don't know, just like the
Mhm.
last two interactions have taken place in the obelisk and the bonfire, like
Yeah, they're
really
good.
brought home stuff that
Okay.
I
Yes.
think
So what I would suggest is that we we try to figure out what is it that we were describing in those areas as far as a category or a type of thing that or types of things, and then breaking them out into their own separate dialogues and replacing the names and that kind of stuff. So this way we have um, something that's more easily can be pointed to rather than saying, oh, go look in the backlog, which is going to get lost, right?
yeah.
Um, these will be broken out into their own documents.
Well, yeah, and yeah, something that because like that's the whole point of the game is to. I mean that person that goes into the bonfire is supposed to like kind of earn the compass, right? They're not just you made it here.
Mhm.
Here's the compass, right? Like, and
Yeah,
they get it, they receive it, but to really receive it, you have to like perceive that it is that.
yeah,
Correct?
yeah, and that requires guidance pretty much. But we'll have all these supplementary materials that a guide could point to say, okay, read this dialogue, just see if that makes any sense to you, and come back with questions. Like that's the kind of education material I think that we need to
Or
have.
simply know the dialogue and sort of have a similar dialogue with them, so attempting to get them to follow it along without even
Yeah,
recognizing
sure.
necessarily. Because hey, go read this is usually yeah, go f yourself kind of a deal.
It depends on the
I'm just being like realistic with people. Like I know what people do. That's
yeah,
just
Well,
the
it's hard
attitude.
to get any kind of way, like assuming because I've been thinking like most people, this whole guidance thing, like most people are that coming into the place are kind of assuming themselves as their own guide.
yeah,
So it's like I
and
don't
then they
want you to
just sit
guide
there.
me. I just pretty much like I seen a post on SO2S today, and it was a position that I had taken before, where the guy's like, I just want to like observe enough of the structure to where it kind of like to where I can kind of go in. He used like a beehive metaphor and like steal the honey for myself or whatever. And it's like
Hmm.
you
Well,
can't do that. You have to build it inside of you and then produce it yourself.
yeah, that's kind of like our what do you call it? That's our vector of infection with the mimetic medicine. It's one of our vectors of infiltration, right?
What, getting the people to do it themselves or
Where the fact that you had enough interest, right, to sort of like assimilate and whatever you wanted to assimilate, and move from there for your own purposes, and it just ended up just sort of like infecting you totally. That's kind of it's pretty much by design, you know.
yeah,
It's just the way it is.
yeah.
Hmm.
Which is kind of how that's kind of Eris's strategy too, but it's looser. Like he just goes around rambling until someone takes an interest in what he's saying, and then uh, it's like that thing. Like people, they want to just hop, skip from this. It's like this low attention span society where it's like
Yeah, this is more way more
mishmash
of
of these different ideas and
yeah, this is much more of an investment.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's a lot more too. Like reading that Philip K. Dick, that sticky post, that Philip K. Dick thing on the Black Iron Prison.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was really awesome. And but it's like you can read it and like if you get what he's saying, you do. If you don't, you don't. But you can't. Uh, if you don't get it, you can't do anything about it. Like
Yeah, you won't
it's
just get it from reading that, which is
yeah,
funny. Even how descriptive it is.
yeah. It's so descriptive, but it's like it's
Yeah.
literally nonsense or it makes perfect sense. Like
Yeah.
maybe there's
Yeah.
some middle ground where it's like it's communicating something, but I don't know exactly what. But
Yeah. That's frustrating
so it's
because
like
it's just a
yeah,
collection of symbols and artifacts.
Come on,
Right?
guys. Of course.
What you do with it. What you do with it, Ben, you usually need guidance to figure out how to really do something with it.
Well, it's like learning to read, obviously.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
It's the
but
same
like the
process.
way people are doing it is you're like assimilate like even reading it and not understanding it, it goes in and it tucks away somewhere
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Hey, Colin, can you get dressed, please?
through
For
some
we're gonna
later
go out soon.
effort it like retroactively
Yes, we are going shopping.
forms into some I think the term stigmergy
I keep forgetting what it means.
Could apply.
I think it could
But yeah,
apply.
when you read something like that article, you even though you may not understand it, you're still getting patterns. Your experience is trying to be recognized into into a cosmos of some sort, and then it's not till later maybe that you figure out, oh, I'm seeing this pattern that I read about before. Now I'm actually seeing it in my experience, and then the whole thing can just cascade.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the initial goal at least because I mean even after the cascade it's not like because I was thinking too like that perceptual end point of grand mastery like I've been there I'm but like just for a second like either like on drugs or like in little flashes of insight or
Mm,
something like that like where you just know like you know what is meant by this pure isomorphism because it's like everything is a synchronicity at the same time and like it's just all you kind of see it
Yeah, how do you reconcile with it, like with your day-to-day mundane stuff?
yeah, and well, and I'm theorizing that because you come into that state with no foundation, it's like it's not gonna stay. It's like such a high structured, ordered state of existence that like as soon as you fall asleep or something like that,
Yeah, you
it like
follow.
it crumbles.
Yeah, this
yep.
is exactly what is meant, like not far enough. Like all of these different states that people attain in the whatever traditions, like, they're all about the states instead of about like using the states to sort of get beyond states altogether. You know, because
Yeah,
that's the unification is when there's nothing left to do. Really, like it's kind of like
yeah. That's the perfection. Hopefully, get there before. Well, and then like it's that bootstrapping thing too. Like and I know you keep harking that. Well, and you kind of changed your stance on that too. That because you do bring up the Ragnarok.
oh,
Because
other religions or whatever. Uh,
well,
the
you were talking
triggering.
about the model's own version of a Ragnarok that had to do with the actual culmination of the bootstrapping.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, I'm still looking for words to actually utilize. I don't have them. Uh,
Because originally you were like the bootstrapping is just always bootstrapping and it never
so
boot.
that's still true. That's still true. It's just more complicated. So
I mean,
There's
if you're bootstrapping into a more complicated bootstrap, I
no,
mean,
so no. That's not what I'm saying. I mean saying something along the lines of like the Roman Empire has collapsed, but we're still in Rome, right? Like aspects of like that structure are alive and well, but the actual empire that is Rome, after all of this is named, is gone, right? There's no seat in Italy right now over the world, well, unless you count Vatican, but it's kind of a different story there. But do you know what I'm saying?
on that
Like
in that sense, I do. But you also are saying, and I agree, that there's a state, not a state, but like you said, a place beyond states that you don't have to do anything else. Like essentially, like the perfection of existence,
it's a
which
great way to put it. Yeah.
already is, you know,
Yeah.
but it's not realized.
Hmm.
And so desire continues towards it. And, once that is achieved, it's like nothing is changing, but nothing is the same either. So it's like,
Everything is contextualized differently. Yeah.
so, and that's all I mean. Not that I, I'm not, I mean, at first I was putting it too deeply into like the operating system metaphor.
Well, it still works
And
quite well, and I don't even mean it as a metaphor often. So,
as opposed to just literal, like,
well, like if you think about the brain as like a bunch of a mesh of wires, right? Like what is it other than an operating system? And likewise, operating within a social context, what is it if not a social operating system running on top of that? I mean, it's not that far fetched to call them that,
no,
right?
no, but I mean, I'm referring to, like, you could call the BIOS an operating system as well,
Right.
but
Yeah.
its function is implicit of a higher tier of,
So this is when you get into like a this is when you get into the whole hologram and where the whole contains the part. So you use if you zoom in into just any one part, all of a sudden you'll realize it has a BIOS of its own. It has like its own operating system within itself, like um, just things like that. And there's just different perspectives on the on any one thing, right? And depends on which level you zoomed in at or what questions you're asking about it. It's you're gonna get this answer or that answer. It's
yeah.
a bit of everything.
And specifically, the part that I'm translating or trying is that once you're in the operating system, you cannot go back to BIOS without rebooting the PC or whatever. But BIOS, that's what it's designed for, is to go to OS, but you can't go from OS back to BIOS
That's true. That's true.
until you reboot. So that's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the becoming, like, it goes to a place where you can't go back without, I guess, starting over or something like that. Like, that's what I mean, but I don't know
Right.
if I'm too far
Right.
or.
Except the brain is not the kind of system you can reboot either, because it's like
Well, exactly,
it's a
but
growing organism.
yeah, it can't be rebooted, but in a sense of, you know, depending on whether, like, that Ragnarok situation, where whether crash or, and I guess this could go into like a reincarnation thing.
So a nation would collapse, right? But the people that made up the nation would probably eventually, what after whatever turmoil does its thing, to whatever the end result is, say they pick up the pieces at that point, and something else starts building out of it. and that something else is going to be either a repetition, right? Or it can get more isomorphic and go that way. But either way, get you both it's both basically an end and a beginning, right? But one way or another, what is collapses.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
and I'm not just saying about a nation. I'm just talking about any form, like take any organization together, take any form of uh, undertaking, personal undertakings. It's all the same pattern, just in different magnitudes, just in different context situations. But the point is that you have a point of collapse or a point of success, essentially. The whole idea of there's nothing left to do. Sorry. The Lincoln, no. The whole idea that so here's another image. Music. Music is. Ian, are you still there?
Me?
He's just
Oh,
pondering.
Yeah,
I was just
you're
chilling.
you're frozen.
I thought the frame was frozen.
Oh, no. Oh, right now I'm frozen. Or-
It says now it's talking about my connection.
I'm not. Oh
Everything
fuck.
looks fine from my point.
Everything looks fine for me too.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
we're
guys
good.
you guys are frozen on my screen though. Awesome. All right, there we go. So where was I before this interruption? What was I saying? Sorry.
Music.
Yeah, music.
You
Sorry.
was talking. You,
Bootstrap.
So there was another point about music. It's when you look at a musician that's no longer starting out, like he's just playing a song, right, out of their head, like it's nothing. There's no effort behind it. It's just the fingers run through the on the fretboard. The fingers run through the. It's not a problem at all. Like it looks like there's no effort behind it, right? But if you were to try to do that, it'd be like you wouldn't be able to. Why? Like, what's the discrepancy there? Right? So where's the effort really? So
yeah, and where's
that's
the mind? There
yes,
is none.
yes.
So
So that's going back to like there's nothing left to do kind of idea there. That's the same principle that works there. So just trying to bring it all back to why I started on this tangent. Um,
we were discussing the bootstrap thing and the differences between.
yeah, yeah, the Ragnarok thing. Sorry. Yeah. So this whole idea of collapse versus not non-collapse, but still an end to what is, right? Let's call it transcendence for the sake of right now. That's the other alternative, really, transcendence instead of collapse. But either way, you don't remain the same, and that transcendence is essentially this point of no effort, where all the effort that is been put into like learning and doing, like you know what I mean, like getting the muscle memory in place from playing the guitar and whatnot, all that like now is culminated in you not even thinking about what you're doing. You're just like,
This
oh, I want to play this sound, I want to play that sound. I just want to rang this together, like speaking. You don't think about the words you're gonna say. You just say what you're thinking, right? Like you don't feel a translation going on in your head. You just say, I want to say that, and you say it. It's the same idea of effortless um, um, movement, effortless being, essentially.
And even that state will collapse eventually.
Well, I mean,
Is that implicit or?
so depending on what you're talking about, like that it's an incollapsible state to begin with because it's not a state; it's just a matter of fact, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like
I mean, phenomenologically, like I'm talking about historically at the largest scale, that
So the only thing
this
that's gonna
archetype
collapse,
should be occurring.
the only thing that's gonna collapse is hankering for it. The only thing that's gonna collapse is chasing this ghost, right? Because it's going to be realized, and as you're saying yourself, it's already there. We already are doing what we naturally are doing. We just don't. Our thinking patterns don't reflect that. Our- they're somewhere else. That's the dream, right? That's everywhere but Portal Mountain.
And so, on that localized level of just the person where we're at right now, even attaining, getting to, whatever point it is, there's still like the death factor that,
The
so
body goes
I'm,
through.
yeah, yeah. And so, you know, the, but it's like, depending on the state that you, not the state, I'm sorry I keep saying state, but
It's okay. No, it's fine. It's fine to use the language to just get the point across.
yeah, yeah. So because we're changing, the whole system is operating, and even eventually into the shared layer, um, then as far as, is it is what is achieved here continuing, as, I'm not going to say, souls or anything like that, but like it's still some kind of like re-bringing together of, whatever brought this experience about specifically in its subjective form in the first place, you know
Hmm. I think
when
that
it
the collapsing of states is something that happens, that you can experience within yourself. Like, for example, to have this a rebirth type moment in your life where you experience that your whole self, your idea of guilt and shame um, and who you are and what you're doing can collapse. That's kind of an inner state collapse, um, which and I think that that would be correlating with a transcendent type experience where what's left over is just what is. You're coming back to a self that's not as arbitrary, that is not simply imposed from the outside upon you. Um, and a state can also collapse in a external way, in that you're just a dude doing your thing, working your job, going to the store to buy things, and suddenly there's nothing in the store, right? And you're like, nothing changed inside of you. It's just that the products aren't there anymore, right? And that's like an external state collapse, which is not necessarily associated with transcendence of any kind, um, but
But it's
simply
just as informative, though.
the churning. Yeah, sure. You can learn a lot from that. Yep. Just that was just my point. I think there's different ways that a state can collapse, but we're coming back to this center, and what you're trying to describe as this thing that whatever caused our experience, um, that's simply it's more like a letting go of the dysmorphic states. We're simply letting go of burning off the karma, as the Buddhist would say, and you're no longer doing these arbitrary things and being a slave to your own desire and that kind of stuff. These flames get extinguished, and what's left over is just what is.
Right. You can also
yeah, I think
associate it back with the childlike state in the Christian doctrine that's being discussed by Christ.
Yep.
Not like a state of ignorance, but a state of pure potentiality rather than arbitrary
Hmm.
directed
Yep.
execution.
Yep.
so I think what you were saying about the store, that was pretty elucidating, because it's like, Yeah, yeah. There's nothing in the store, and so it's like it's still you still your plans got changed, but you adapt, and that metaphor or whatever you want to call it went a long ways with what I was wondering
Mhm.
specifically.
Cool.
So, because that's basically what happens, like,
Yep.
uh,
And then, but then you get people reacting with anger and who did this to us and this kind of stuff. And the fight starts over again, and you go through whatever, a collapse or anything. And then you still have the same constituents who created the system which collapsed in the first place, yet again creating another system where everything is again completely externalized and nothing is my responsibility. And then it just happens again. So you easily have these cycles uh, built in, and just it's like keeps fueling itself to keep going in these expansion and contraction um, cycles, which is crazy. But that's how society is emergent from the individual or participant. Um, yeah, so that gets pretty deep. Like what is actually different? Like what is a divergence from that? And um, I can only just look at and think of like peer-to-peer relationships as an example of something that's completely um, non-existent practically in our society. Um, how we're
um,
relying on corporations to mediate everything, and these big massive structures so that everyone is atomized into the being like exactly the same. You just get a job, get money, then go buy your products. Um, it's such a massive structure, which is not like if you put a like take somebody from a native from Amazon or something, one of the like the untouched tribes or whatever, and pluck them from there, put them into this society. They'll have this. They'll probably want to be connecting with people and doing things and like, how do I do this? How do I do that? It's not like no. You tell them you go to work for a sideshow and in a carnival, and then you get money, and with these bills then you go buy all your things, right? Like that's what you would tell the Amazonian.
So you go to a carnival where you work for strangers in front of strangers to get money from these strangers.
Like what? I'm hungry. I need food put into my belly. Why am I dancing behind a cage for people snapping these cameras at me? Like
Going to
that's
other strangers to get clothes and food from those strangers.
so complicated and complex, like considering how simple that living life could be.
I'm just trying to point out that everybody's a fucking stranger at this point.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is why I think it's important that we continue on with meeting and
Hmm.
peer to peering amongst this triad or whatever. That's so
We're
because
the
I feel
perfect triad. Right now, we have on my screen academic, pragmatic, and narrative, right, like right there, and devotional, in the right order on the Zoom screen. It's awesome.
yeah, it's like I yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it that say, hey, this is a good moves can be made, and I'm starting to come into a level of coherence where I'm feeling more uh, confident with manipulating the documents and
So,
Awesome.
so the myth is
more.
working for you now more.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
awesome.
I'm not fully into. I mean, I'm not like that's not what I think about. Like I'm not thinking in terms of let me follow this map to grand mastery with, but right
Yeah,
now just operating on that health stack, that layer right there, and just kind of like
and I think that
observe.
resonates with what I've been kind of getting at with the devotional temperament and how that's approached, where devotional is top down, whereas pragmatic is the same thing but bottom up. And so with a pragmatic, it would be like, okay, so this is the guild structure, this is how it works. So all that stuff I laid out on Crystal Obelisk, right? That's that's pragmatic temperament, like all of that structure. But like the devotional temperament, all he needs to do is be told, okay, now work on this, work on that, work on this, from that same structure, right? But not necessarily explained. Oh, this is the educational program that we're going to be going through, and blah 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 blah. And I've
Which I mean,
encountered.
it is still helpful to like exactly what you wrote the other day that I responded to today about
Can get out of the kitchen,
pragmatically
please?
executing those protocols and basically just being smart about it and but like establishing like a habitual where you don't have to just try at it. It's
Mhm.
like a natural thing, and then you go
Lincoln, get out
the
of the
next.
kitchen. Sorry. Go on.
Is you know pretty much like what we'd already talked about, but
You're talking
no,
about
I don't
establishing
want to.
a habit or a habitual or a
Well, like a routine,
routine. That's the
like
word.
not necessarily like if I lose the context or the cosmos that I'm in, then I'm completely lost because you know what I'm saying. I don't want it to be like that
Yeah.
where you become dependent on your the exact order of your environment to like, but it's like a generalization of sorts, like
Hmm.
an
But it has to be
ability to
grounded. You have
yeah.
to ground this into your own story, into your own flowing through your environment and whatever.
Well, into what you are, and your story is also your own makeup. For instance, their story is that you're an animal on the planet. Their story is
Yeah.
that you're a biological system. You know, like
There's stories
it
that
still
we're
matters. It
an
still matters.
alien hybrid.
All I'm
Yeah.
saying is that it still matters.
Speak for
Like,
yourself, Shania.
you, you know what I mean. So it's got to be isomorphic to that. It's got to be grounded somewhere in that. That's where there's the stack comes from. That's where the concerns come from. Is from that same stack where natural guilds is all about that stack, and so on and so forth. All of this is about the damn
Because yeah,
stack.
no matter what your narrative is, the situation is, and the natural concerns and the natural guild will be just as relevant,
Mhm.
no matter
Yeah,
Yep.
like
how you think we got here or where you think we're going. It's like
yeah, it's besides the
we
point.
still got
Yep.
yeah. Which I mean, but it still needs to be isomorphic with at a level of you don't want to be eating your own feces or
Unless you're a rabbit of some sort.
yeah,
In
yeah,
that case,
or
you really do.
Or if you're a Bear
yeah,
Grylls.
What?
yeah, yeah, or yeah, he likes to squeeze the elephant turd juice into his mouth, and then he goes sleeps at a 5-star hotel once the camera turns off.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna stop asking what you're talking about at this point.
He's
Yeah,
the the survival expert guy who drank his own piss
he's a
to
TV show.
survive.
Yeah,
just as is, or
Yep. And then he went and
yeah,
stayed at a hotel.
yeah. He basically just peed in his own mouth, like.
I think I think it was something else going on there. Guys, what happened now?
he's
uh,
British,
What
so
did I tell you about doing that?
yeah, could
Get me
explain
to help.
so
that. Yeah, I thought there's a good point I wanted to bring up that Jan, you mentioned, and I don't know how far articulated or nuanced our ideas are, but the fact of us meeting up together, um, when you have uh, when you have peers coming online, um, there's something special there that happens. It's you're basically a proximity guild is coming online in that moment. And if you're sitting at home and not talking to anybody, your entire stack is limited to the loop back. Um, so I found this a very interesting kind of goal or a gauge as to how effective how effective I'm being in general, which is to say, am I doing anything in the shared space which is actually reflecting and being reflected by other people, or am I just at home writing protocols maybe, or whatever, getting thoughts down? And there's something very powerful about focusing on that, the actual connection of people, um, when you're actually connecting your minds together in real time. That's when the proximity guild comes online, and that's when you're achieving a higher level of coherence than if you're just with yourself. You have a proximity guild coming online. You're reflecting to others and through others, and they're reflecting uh, through you or whatever.
You're just you're not necessarily increasing coherence, you're increasing potentiality for
Sure, I
coherence.
And
For
the loop
coherence.
back includes shared, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
and it depends on what kind of people those like. I've got several roommates, and I
yes,
deal with
yes,
them, but I'm not necessarily. I don't feel like
Okay, I got a phone
my
call over here, sorry.
coherence is,
being
you
reflected.
know, not that it's being reflect. I mean, it's going out, but as much as something goes out, it must be received, and then I'm
Yeah,
receiving what they're putting out
yeah.
inadvertently,
No,
and so
that's a
it's
good
like
point.
it might be like a stabilization or something, but I don't know if it's like a net increase or. Uh, but that's not really the terms you used, anyways. You just said coming online, which
Yeah,
I mean, we have to, regardless of what the ideologies of one to another, we still got to get along so that we can
yep.
make our situation work.
There, like you say, there's different degrees of coherence even within a proximity guild. Um, so like if you're talking to somebody who doesn't get the model, that's different from you're talking to somebody who does get the model and you're working on developing. And that's kind of like that higher level of coherence um, that I think is really a good goal to have, to say, I want to connect with others on this level, not just myself. But that's a good point, that even just getting along with somebody, like it's there's some skill involved. Having relationships is good and healthy. Um, but when it's so coherent, like this is the ultimate kind of like religious or spiritual goal, I guess, is to come online with each other in a highly coherent way, in which new things become possible.
Yeah, and like the bodhisattva sense, or like the church sense, where it's like, yeah, and yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And then when you do have
We can stop
inner
them.
coherence isomorphic to the coherence between individuals, then you
Hmm.
know it produces like a it's like goes up to another layer. Like what three people that understand what each other are saying will
Hmm.
produce more than one person.
Yeah,
It's just kind of like a natural thing.
Stop.
greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
Stop.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that potential is the point, kind of, because you can sit in isolation
Stop.
and you don't get it's harder to reflect your own self from within yourself. Like you're not critical of yourself when you're creating something. You're in some ways. Whereas if you just put an idea out, somebody's going to reflect it to you, and these ideas are supposed to be socially coherent, anyways. So in some regards, you need um, like a memetic. Um, what would you call it? Like a successful memetic replication is proof of concept of that what you just said or expressed is socially viable, is viable across not only just yourself, which is an
That can backfire.
untested ground. Fine, because of dysmorphic mimicry or whatever, however you want to say it, or even dysmorphic memes. But um,
Just hostility in general. That level of coherence.
what I'm saying is, you can prove viability of things by putting it through a filter of another person and seeing if they can understand and accept it, or if it's not making any sense. As soon as one other person does get it, there's this, okay, there's something here, right?
Yeah, I think I only reinforced your point. I didn't even say anything against it.
Okay.
So it's yeah, it's like a. I mean, it's also the viability of the idea that it's sort of like a mimetic ecology where evolution is taking place. You
Yep.
know, so
Yeah,
that's naturally
replication.
what's going to happen is exactly what you said. It's just and you know what that evolution is doing is I don't know if it's necessarily the most viable things come out every time, but
Right.
I mean, eventually, I think it'll even out. Like, if the most viable things or the best things are what thrived naturally, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
You know, it's more like in a sense, it's almost like the most greedy thing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's
There's
gonna
just more
take like,
potential for dysmorphism to arise in any new platform, right? In any new plateau.
It
yeah,
depends on the coherence of the actors with which you're cooperating. If they have a high coherence, then what's going to be replicated and found viable is going to go through that whole the constraints that they're looking at a behavior and they're saying this is very isomorphic, because they know the constraints, because they're coherent, so to speak, and these are the kind of actors that will amongst themselves replicate isomorphic behaviors, right?
yeah, and
It's about
that's to me is the ultimate. I mean, to speak in a sense of utility, being in that state will necessarily reflect back down to you. It'll loop in a stronger coherence, and so your quote unquote growth will be sturdier, you know, and more. I mean, in my, you know, even the Bible, you know, a cord of three is hard to break or some shit like that. Like,
yeah.
um,
Uh-huh.
so
Yep.
it's got like it's got like a certain utility as far as like attaining that goal of empathy, you know, but also there's the goal of transforming the guild or you know, coming into the high level. I mean, I don't know. It depends. It's just perceptual, but
Yeah, you can say it in
uh,
many different ways. Actually, it's fine. It's
yeah, yeah.
bring the
So
guild into reality, or realize the guild, or become the archetype, or like be the grandmaster, whatever you want to like frame it as. Like it's a personal thing, right?
so many different angles. Yeah. So on our, I was gonna get to our because the last time maybe it wasn't on a video chat, maybe it was just in text. We talked about the commitments that we were executing,
Mm,
and was wondering
yep.
if for the sake of sort of strengthening that aspect of existence, if that would be something worth discussing, because
Sorry, which aspect of existence? I missed that.
we were talking about the commitments that we were executing. You talking about you was going to the gym, and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
hitting the bag and uh,
Yep.
maintain a healthier diet and just kind of
Yeah.
like reaffirming, I guess, that kind of stuff in case, because like for me, a lot of it fell off. You know.
Well, it's everybody's got rusty starts and all of that. It's a matter of just believing it to the point of where you just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps to get the feedback loops too. Like once you see results,
Also,
then
are you by yourself? Like,
Me,
are you,
yeah,
that's a
I'm
huge
the
part
only
of it.
one.
Huge part of it in terms of motivation in a lot of sadly in a lot of cases. Um, so I'm not sure how you could go about that, but it would help to have somebody like doing something with you. Just as one route to go
Yeah,
about it.
there's
Um,
just no one around me that cares
like,
about that sort of.
yeah, we'll root for you, but like we can't go down there and like, kick your ass or anything for it if you don't do
No,
it.
I don't. I don't need. I was just. It just as long as that's a topic of discussion at all, then
No, it's gonna
that
it has to
drives the
be like
narrative toward it. That alone increases like the uh, the viability of that loop completing to a feedback.
yeah. So in that regard, it's yeah, go to the gym, do bunch of stuff. You eat the apple, all that.
The apple a day.
um, so I don't know. I started doing a log. I kind of fell off of that too, but what I was recording in this log was anything I wanted to keep track of. So, for example, like my finances or whether I'd went to the gym or like trying to quantify something like my weight. If I cared about that, I would record it. Um, and this way you have you're gathering data to feed back into this loop, right? And you can look back and say, oh, where was I last year, right? So starting a log might be an idea or a journal. It might help. But like I said, I fell off of that. And
I've tried that a lot and it never works for me either. 'Cause
yeah,
it's almost like that's a loop too. Like
It's a negative feedback loop in there.
you have to loop the logging to be able to get the bigger loop of seeing results on the
yeah,
logging. Like
yeah,
it's turning like one set of habits that I'm trying to procure into two,
right. So another
and
way you could do like a more mild form of that might be just have like some sticky notes, and on them you may have something that you're trying to increase the coherence of, whatever it is, like your strength or your
Um,
diet, and then you just have it there as a reminder. You can look
yeah, I
at
was
it.
thinking of doing that too because I get reminders whenever I don't like if I eat like this big old pile of greasy ass food,
so
Yeah,
I
it makes my stomach hurt, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I need to remember this the next time I go for that, but I don't
so
usually.
here's something I want maybe you try as an experiment and maybe feedback to me as a kind of a commitment to an external party. The program zero thing, the commitment to execution of constraint protocols, right? So the idea here, the idea behind the name program zero is that it's a very catchy name, like you were saying. Um,
Yeah,
And so one of the things I'm thinking very strongly about is like to use it like a chant, like an inner chant, something that you repeat to yourself all the time. So
Initiate program 0.
you could say initiate program 0 if you'd like. I'm just saying like a mental remind. To me, it sounds more. It's more like just saying out in your inner voice, like program 0, program 0, program 0, and just sort of like mentally, constantly like remind. Like not only say it like as a like and just not even hear yourself on autopilot, but more like say it and listen, say it and listen. So that's like the it's a linchpin in and of itself, but and it doesn't have it cuts away a lot of the details, right? So, but it's I'm
Why do you call it a
wondering,
linchpin?
hmm?
Why do you call it a linchpin?
Do you know what a linchpin is?
The way we've been using it in the model?
It holds everything together.
Right, but we've had specific use for that word in the
Yes,
model.
it's the meditation that you're doing. We've always
Right.
used it in terms of
For
meditation.
the specific purpose of illuminating the memetic behind the Cosmo narrative.
This is like an indirect way to achieve the same thing. This is
All right.
recitation. Yeah, this is the recitation exercise.
Okay, I just hope that it can be formulated in that way somehow. If we're gonna call it a linchpin.
All right, we'll get into that later then. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so I'm just trying to sort of convey this exercise further to you.
Okay, program 0. And what would be the difference between reciting program 0 or reciting Grandmaster in
Um,
invoking Grandmaster?
functionally, none. It just depends on how you prefer it. This,
Or basically any symbols that are mapped to something that will bring about a memorization or remembering of the
Yeah.
thing, you know.
yeah, like Grandmaster just sounds a little ominous to me. So Program
Right.
Zero at least sounds functional.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds more like a CrossFit training program or some shit than a
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
like
this
a
is gonna
wizard
just
thing.
imagine yourself on the street and you're like, Grandmaster, Grandmaster. People are like, what the, what?
I will become the Hokage.
But if you just say Program Zero, it's like, oh, it's just trying to remember some program.
this is probably reflecting the temperament too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. Like,
Program Zero appeals to my academic
Probably, yeah.
disposition.
So something like Grandmaster that may be perceptive.
Perceptive or devotional.
but
Sure.
but the practice of you know garnering external commitments and executing like that sort of thing, that's like a devotional
Hmm.
uh
Mm.
practice in and of itself, and it's not only devotional practice, but it's an assumptive recommendation based on you know what that temperament means to, you know what I'm
Mm.
saying, like and I try to, I don't know, I do see things in the narrative format, and my most intense forms of self introspection do involve crafting narratives, and that's sort of what this
Hmm.
but I'm also trying to branch out of that temporarily to maybe sort of hasten the activation of that odd fourth man out, you know, that kind of
Hmm. I'm
that
trying to
that that
branch into it, into
oh
narrative,
into the
because I tend to think more abstractly, and then sometimes, like, it's even hard to remember certain events if you don't actually. tell yourself a story about it, it's like Cosmos. There was a bunch of things, like, and you don't remember the events. You can't tell a story. You can't tell somebody what happened. It's just like, it modified your cosmos a bit, very bit, but yeah, that's kind of a challenge for me.
Yeah, and
Well,
like to
it's
me
even more of a
that's
challenge for me.
Yeah.
I'm even more
to say
removed.
like to say like and that's how I always relate to, like, last night we was uh had to do paint that one, which is, if you ever heard the song Tool Third Eye,
Yep.
Three Warm and Wild Eyes, he's a real Tool fan. So, and I was relating to him narratively the whole basically the whole cancer metaphor and the whole cancer narrative and the cell based metaphor, and that's just to me like that's when the the one man guild or whatever became realized, and to me that's even still a narrative usage of that term, because like every time, like, why am I doing that? Oh yeah, to like change the world, you know what I'm saying? Like
That's why the brain is the best meme for that.
for
For Giphy. Pinky in the brain. Trying to take
oh
over
yeah,
the
yeah,
world.
exactly, yeah, take over the world, yeah, but like heal the world, like, because you have people that are, let's take down the government and install this government, and we'll have these individuals be a part of that society, and it's like, no, it will fall apart because all the individuals are cancerous, not all of
Did,
them, but
did I just don't remember the French Revolution where they chopped off the heads and then the people that replaced them, they chopped off their heads, then the people that replaced them, oh, guess what happened to them?
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
they chopped off their heads.
so it's like
And
a
so
top
on and so
down
forth.
it's top down social regime change, and it's like,
Why did that process ever stop, by the way? No, just
I
kidding.
think it
It's
might be they got
not a
that
great idea.
yoga vest thing going on.
It's
It
uh
might.
it's it's a great reflection of just the idea that you can have a revolution and that's going to fix something. No, like, the revolution is the process of moving about in the shape of a circle. So you come back to where you started. That's what revolving is.
Yeah, that's what revolution. Yeah, it's right there.
Chop the head, chop the head, chop the head. Okay, are we getting somewhere yet?
Well, we're getting to having less options.
But it's like when you get a group of people together that are seeking, they have this level of realization where they at least know it's a problem. But then that's the only solutions that are being thrown around, and it's just a big echo chamber circle jerk,
Yeah.
where it's like ain't none of y'all gonna pick up a gun and do that real shit, that, but y'all can take to the journey from absurdity to grand mastery, and you can change your surrounding environment and your inner empathy complex or whatever at the same time, and you'll get there. You'll get more done doing that
Boom!
eventually.
Yeah. I just
Problem
imagine
solved!
I just imagine
Problem solved.
your little speech here happening in front of like a militia of like, I don't know, gang of 20, and they're just like staring at you. If you all just went and checked out the ground
from,
there.
from
We've got some
absurd.
charts here.
Yeah, good luck with that. That's
Here-
diplomacy right there.
here's some Portal Mountains.
Well, look, if I was talking
It's so
to a
clear.
militia, if I was, I'd be like, hey, let's do it, because that's,
Why don't you guys
uh,
staple your lobes?
yeah, we're gonna.
Oh man.
So,
Yeah.
well, I wouldn't be saying that in that context, but people that aren't militia, like, there's not even any will to act out that inner revolutionary rhetoric, you know.
Hmm.
It's diplomacy.
Um,
Tough.
Can we wrap this up? I gotta go to the grocery store
Oh
before
yeah, good call. We're
it
probably
closes.
what, like 2 or 3
oh,
hours in now.
Yeah, yeah. We
It's a
got
good one.
another freebie on this, so it didn't cut us off.
Nice.
yeah, I saw that. I was wondering how that
Yep.
worked. Okay, good talking to y'all. Is there anything I'm gonna just keep saying program zero until I become a grandmaster?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
uh,
that's 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 the experiment right there. That's one more linchpin to try out.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds
Uh,
good.
Yeah,
was
just
everything achieved that wanted to get achieved in this meeting?
Oh, it's good for today. We can debrief on chat for
Okay.
come up with some ideas for our next meeting
yeah.
where
I
we want.
think we should put together some wish lists, the things
Yeah,
that for the next
Yeah,
one.
let's.
because the potential for movement is much greater than the manifestation of it. Yeah.
Of a Telegram chat.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
no, it's doing good. It's doing good. Anyways, yeah, yeah,
way
good
too
talking to
good.
you. I'm gonna leave.
So yeah,
I'm not gonna go right on the chat because I'm gonna do some stuff out here
Yeah,
too.
same here.
Uh,
I'm gonna try today to update that Portal Mountain document, the meta document or whatever, and we can start using that again as a kind of like planning center for what we what we can do or what we should do.
All right.
Or the guild.
For the guild, for the
for the guild.
archetype.
All
All
right.
right, guys.
Cheers.
Well, have a good one.
You too.
All right.
Later.
Bye.